and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
There's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And our guest for this evening is Butch Witkowski. And we're going to be talking about UFOs in Pennsylvania. And in hour two, we're actually going to be talking about a very interesting subject, human mutilations. So that's going to go a little bit off topic, sort of. We don't know if it's off topic or not. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about Butch right before we introduce him. And I want to thank all the listeners that support the show. And if you can't support the show and still want to listen free, you can always listen on podcastufo.com every Wednesday night at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the Dark Matter Digital Network. That's Thursdays at 10 to midnight. I want to tell everybody that I am completely bald, and if you don't believe me, just go to podcastufo.com. You'll see right there a picture of myself shaved. And you know what? It's cold, even though it's warm. I have a kind of a cold head. And you know, I might keep the look. I think it actually looks pretty good, but I'm proud to say that because of all my friends and all the people that listen to the show and some family members, we have exceeded the goal of $1,000, and it's still growing. People can still donate. They keep it open for a while. We had one listener in particular that really stepped up to the plate, and I'm going to mention his name, Alan Sanderson. Thanks so much. And a number of listeners, there's another one, Reginald, I hope I can say, Reggie, he pitched in really as well. And it doesn't matter, small donations, big donations, it's all been very nicely received. They're very excited over there at the, it's called onemissionbuzzoff.org. They're extremely excited because I exceeded my goal and everyone's real happy. I'm real happy, and I want to thank everyone that helped out in that. And let's see, Alejandro, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Doing great. And you know, it's good to, your Skype sounds perfect tonight. The last couple of weeks we had trouble, and somehow it's worked itself out. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, it was changes with the wireless internet here at my work, and we finally got that worked out, and it's a good thing. It's good to be talking to you on Skype again.
Yeah. Hey, do we have anything happening? I know that it's been kind of quiet, which is good in some ways, but bad in another way. I like when things are active.
Yeah.
Anything?
We don't have anything.
All right. Well, it's good.
I'm just kidding. We always got something.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing I'd like to talk to you about, I don't think we talked about this on your show, and my memory is too terrible to remember. Did we talk about that ham radio case?
It's not. Boy, I'll tell you what, if I'm forgetting it and the listener remembers it, I'll be in big trouble, but I don't remember anything.
Yeah. So this is a neat case where Pat Daniels is his name. He, I guess, has his own podcast on paranormal topics and such. But he listens, he's a ham radio enthusiast, and he was listening to his ham radio one evening, and he was listening to transmissions between airliners and a control tower, and he heard this plane report a UFO sighting, which is kind of exciting. Here's a quote from the website UFOs Northwest, which helped with the investigation, about what he says he heard. He says, a pilot reported seeing an extremely large, bright object that he estimated a mile wide to his right. The air traffic controller told him that he was looking in the direction of Nephi, Utah. Apparently, the air traffic controller told the pilot that the object was not detected on radar. The object appeared to keep pace with the aircraft. So he was excited. That's what he's listening for. But unfortunately, he didn't record it. He did go to Utah MUFON. Erica Lukes was the director at the time, and they did an investigation. They went and listened to the archives of these aircraft, and they did find some archives for and figure out what flight it was. They found out it was an American Airlines flight from San Francisco to, I think it was something like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then they put in a FOIA request. They also enlisted the help of William Puckett of UFOs Northwest. William Puckett was a meteorologist for a while, worked for the EPA for many years, and he's worked in radar. And so he's helped out with many radar UFO cases. So they put in a FOIA to the FAA to get more information, and they hit the mother lode. 6 weeks later, they got audio tapes, tower logs, and some radar data. So the audio did confirm that there was a report. So in the audio, which is posted on our site and on UFOs Northwest, you can hear the conversation. And the pilot does say that he asked, you wouldn't happen to know what this bright orange square we're flying over is, would you? The tower said, no, I'm not sure. Is it on your right side? And the pilot says, it's actually directly off our nose right now. It's below us. What town are we next to? And they said, you're near Nephi, Utah. And the pilot said, okay, cool. Now I'll see what I can go find. Thank you. So that's the extent of the conversation. So unfortunately, the pilot doesn't mention this object, following them or being a mile wide or even being in the air. So it gives the impression it could possibly be something on the ground. However, the researchers are pretty sure that this audio was edited. So parts of it were removed. So they don't feel they have the full audio. And then William Puckett did some look at the radar data, and he did find off to the right of the object, just south of Nephi, actually just above the highway there, Highway 15, he found some unknown returns. So he also talks about how these returns were very erratic, so kind of strange, like the object perhaps was tumbling or moving strangely. Great case, great research to try to confirm that something did happen. Mark D'Antonio of MUFON took a look at the case, and he argues that, unfortunately, the official story, all we have is someone talking about something below the plane. So there's a couple possibilities. It could be a controlled fire on the ground, which would explain what they saw, and the radar returns. The smoke would be the radar returns.
Oh, really?
However, investigators have retorted and said, well, that's not the case because we didn't see that on Doppler, and this isn't an area where they can do controlled burns. Another researcher suggested it was perhaps a nearby power plant. But Lukes and Puckett say, I think these pilots, having flown in this area many times, would have known of the nuclear power plant, so wouldn't have mistaken that for something strange. And they're still trying to get more audio and a witness, perhaps maybe even a pilot, so they can confirm that the pilot did say, it was a mile wide and this was something in the air, because that's a big key. And right now, all we have is Daniel's word to go on those aspects.
Wow. Now, and why would he even bother to pursue it if it wasn't something like that, really? And this orange thing on the ground may not have anything at all to do with what he had said possibly earlier about the mile-wide thing.
It's possible, although it was a bright orange square he was explaining as something that was a mile wide, according to Daniels, in what he had heard. In fact, that's the only key between what Daniels reportedly heard and what is in the audio, which appears to confirm Daniels' what he had heard on the transmission. So that confirms that he heard something. Can we be certain that Daniels isn't mistaken somehow in his memory? We can't say for sure. And, Daniels, I've heard from multiple sources, is a trustworthy person. However, in order for this case to really have some bones, to really have more to it, we'll need some more official verification that these pilots did feel that they were observing something peculiar that was in the air.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's a cool case. I really like it. I really like the work that was done to confirm, and it's surprising that the FAA got back so quickly with the FOIA request.
Now, would you think that it's possible this pilot would report this to NICAP?
Possible, but it's just a minority of sightings that are reported. If it was reported, I think that Richard Haynes and the guys at and from what I understand, one of the people who work with NARCAP, Ted Rowe, I think is helping out, or they've actually consulted with him on this case. So, and they haven't reported having received any reports on this. So, it sounds like the pilot just kind of was asking, do you know what this is? They said no. But there's an interesting, thing is that the tower said, "Is this thing off to your right?" And some people ask, why did the tower say that? It almost implies that the tower was referring to some radar hits or something that they saw on radar, because, how did he know that whatever this was to the right?
That's a real good point. And I'd never heard of smoke causing any radar hits before, but I guess it makes sense if it's dense enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, smoke can definitely do that. I guess their argument, though, is that smoke would also appear on Doppler, and they did check their Doppler radar, and they didn't see that. But there's no argument that smoke could cause radar hits, so among the experts. So I guess that's still a possibility, but Mark is just saying that this is just a possibility he's exploring. But they'll definitely need, on that end, to prove if that was the case, they'll need more evidence to that also. So, for instance, some recording of a controlled burn in the area or something like that.
Another thing is a lot of the UFO sightings that you hear about create no hits on radar at all. And that happens quite often, actually, which is another mystery within itself. Maybe... of course, if they can get here from wherever they're getting here from, they can probably be as stealth as they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Which
probably.
Yeah. So what else is happening?
So what else? This is a story that Roger Marsh just sent in and posted today of an event that took place in 2014, September 12th, 2014. Now, it's an old case. We wrote about it on September 15th of 2014 at openminds.tv. But it is brought up again, and they finally kind of have at least closed it. It's not completely closed, but they've just decided to mark it as an unknown. This is a sighting that actually, the story is UFO over Las Vegas, described as moving into a mist. And this witness recorded this video of this bright object that has like a mist below it. Some people described it as a beam of light that was headed towards the ground. However, many experts feel that this video, which is pretty interesting, is most likely a rocket. And if we know more lately, since we had those really big sightings in California fairly recently with the rockets making these extraordinary, huge, brightly lit orbs in the sky. And this looks somewhat similar to that. And it was seen across several states when it happened, and it made a lot of news. However, what's interesting, and this is noted in the MUFON investigation very well by the researcher, is that the investigator on this case, is that there was never any conclusion. So there were lots of ideas about what it might have been, and the news pursued these, and such as Vandenberg, a rocket from Vandenberg, a rocket from a test rocket from a submarine off the coast of California. All of these different ideas. However, they couldn't find those to be the case. They talked to Vandenberg. They talked to the Navy, and they said, nope, not ours, not ours. So it was never found what it might be. In fact, when I looked at our story, James Oberg, who is a space journalist and a historian, he writes a lot for NBC and I think mostly for NBC, but also others, space.com and stuff like that. He actually often looks at our stories, and he said that it looked like a pretty standard rocket launch. However, the usual suspects seem to have alibis this time, he said. So we still don't know, who it was, where this rocket came from. So it's still a mystery.
That is really strange. You would think that it would, come right up who it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's off the coast of California, for God's sakes.
I mean, no one can, launch a rocket without having any, I don't want to say, record of it, but no one can just plain launch a rocket without anyone knowing about it, unless it's the enemy.
Yeah, I have a feeling that, if you and I, went to San Diego, let's say, and rented a boat and, launched a rocket off a mile off the coast or something, it would get noticed, and they'd figure out it was us, and we'd probably get in a little bit of trouble.
I know, but, this is the type of trouble I would like to get in. So when are we doing it?
Would you?
Yeah, because now I have a shaved head, and I'm criminal-like.
Exactly.
Right?
You're one of those kind of, you're a bad dude now. You're like...
That's right.
But, so this is really weird. I mean, it could have been a top-secret test, and so it's kind of an unacknowledged test, but a test where the populace could see it. It's a big mystery. I think it's so strange. It's really weird.
Now, you may have said this, and I may have just missed it. Is there film clips of this?
Oh, there are videos and pictures of this. In particular, Roger's writing about one video that MUFON received, and they posted it on YouTube, and it's in our story. But I also put a link to our story on it from 2014, and Jason McClellan had written that story, and he has some video and other links to some other videos that were captured of this object in September 2014.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks so much, man. It's always fun to have you on the show.
Hey, it's my pleasure, buddy. Congratulations on,
on having no hair?
Matching your goal.
That's right. Thank you.
And actually, you probably raised about $1 per strand of hair because you really didn't have that many.
You know what? When I saw what was left, all the gray hair on the floor, it really made me. I felt young again.
Really?
Yeah, I feel younger now.
Well, that's good.
Virile. Yeah.
Wow. You sound like it when you say that.
Yeah, I got a little pep in my step.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Just don't go committing crimes or
I'll try not to.
Buy a Harley or something.
Yeah, well, the Harley's, it's on layaway, but I don't know. I'll think about that. But anyway, thanks so much. And
all right, no problem.
We'll be talking to you next week.
Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, everyone. So a little bit about our guest. Butch has been an independent researcher since 1989, when he, along with 4 other people, witnessed a UFO of unbelievable size, quietly hovering above a mountain in Tucson, Arizona, and it was totally silent. And that's one of the things that, baffled me the most about my own sighting, is that it was silent. It was burnt copper in color and at least 3 football fields in length. Well, Butch began his own investigation into the UFO phenomena on that very day. He joined MUFON in 2007, and he was able to dig deeper into the past and existing cases and pursue even more on-site investigations. But his research was still lacking something, and he wasn't getting to the crucial answers that he was seeking. It was this time to go about his work in a different manner, and after almost a year of serious reflection and consideration, Butch started UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania in 2009. And he brought together some of the best like-minded and long-time researchers he could find. We'll talk more about that. And so hang on just a minute. We'll be right back with our guest, Butch Witkowski. Welcome to the show, Butch.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And this is another thing sometimes that, probably shouldn't bring it up at all, but we almost didn't get this thing together.
Right.
That's the thing about live shows. Anything can happen. And my Skype wasn't talking to your Skype, and phone issues weren't working, on and on and on, but we did it. We're here.
Yep,
and
got that solved.
That's right. So, Butch, I always look around for, different people in the UFO field, and your background was fascinating. I watched you lecture on YouTube and thought you'd be interesting to have on the show, and I always like to say, it doesn't have to be someone totally mainstream. It's always fun to have different views, and it's it's one of the reasons I love doing the show. So let's. Why don't you tell the listener your background? I just told the story of how you got interested in UFOs, but let's hear your background. You were involved in criminal investigation or something like that in the past.
Law enforcement, and then after the sighting, I took an interest in trying to find out what I actually witnessed there in Tucson with others. I should mention that every sighting I've ever had, I've never been alone, so I know I'm not crazy. And like you said, I was just needing to go about it a different way. I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. And after spending a small fortune on a library and all this other stuff that you need to do on the internet and, talking to people and going to conferences and this, that, and the other thing, I decided to start the UFO Research Center. And we started in 2009 with one group. We now have 12 groups, 2 in Europe and 10 in this country. Florida, Georgia, Utah, Oklahoma, to name a few. All the researchers involved are all long-time researchers, either, on their own or with MUFON. They encompass current and former police officers. We have a federal judge. We have photographic analysts. We have psychiatrists. We have private detectives. We have abduction research specialists, and we do it a little differently than most groups, because what we try to do is prove that something happened or didn't happen forensically. Because if it couldn't happen forensically, then it didn't happen. So if somebody tells me that they saw something above the trees at about 1,000 feet, and then I look at the weather and find out that there was no visibility whatsoever, or it was a blowing snowstorm, you pretty much know it was, a made-up story. Mm-hmm. But when you go out and you spend a day or 2 or 3 on a case on site, and we have 2 mobile units here in the state. They're fully equipped. Matter of fact, we just replaced the one. We got a brand spanking new one. And they have everything in them from, built-in laptops and internet connections, radar, every type of investigative tool that you can need on the scene of anything. I don't care if it's a paranormal event or a UFO event or a cryptozoology event. We have all the equipment on there. The only difference between the truck on the East Coast, on the east end of Pennsylvania, which is parked out in front of my place, to the one that's out in the west end of Pennsylvania, is that we have rappelling gear in this truck, and that other truck has dive gear because he's a certified diver. Other than that, the trucks are equipped the same. We have our own personal radio channel. We actually have 6, and they're regular. Everything's either military grade or police grade in the units, and it really works out very well because I can go. Well, we just took a fast trip down to Virginia to investigate some body parts that were found. And we had everything to do what we had to do, including take DNA and everything else. So, I mean, there's very few groups, and I would say probably maybe, I don't think there's any out there to do that. Everybody kind of does the old talk to the person that made the report. Some look at the area, some never go to the area. Cameras, we have infrared, we have television-grade video. All our cameras are Nikon, all our computers are Panasonic Toughbooks, so we have canopies, we have tents we can set up, we have tables, chairs. I mean, we've got everything we need. We can go out. We can actually spend 7 days in the field without leaving the truck.
Wow. Now, where does the money come from to get these babies on the road?
My pocket.
Really? It's privately funded?
Yes. We don't take donations. We don't solicit any donations. And I did that for a reason. Once you start asking for donations or people, you have a donor that's really giving you some serious money, you're kind of beholden to somebody. And I don't ever want that to be said about us, that, the only reason we're agreeing with him is because he gave him a check for $1,000 or something like that. I don't ever want to hear that.
Sounds like campaign contributions.
Yeah. So we do it on our own. Now, we do take old equipment that people don't use anymore, because we do have a couple folks in our group that they just can't afford to go out and buy equipment. So if somebody wants to donate an old camera or an old tape player or something, a video camera or something like that, we'll take that and send it to them. But that's the only type of donations we ever take. And I think we took 2 cameras and 1 video camera, and I think somebody sent us a bunch of star maps one time. So that's pretty much all we've ever taken, and I'm really not into that. I mean, there's always bad vibes with that, and I just don't want to get involved in that drama.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if anyone wants to call in, I do believe our phone is working. You can call in and ask the guest a question. If you're listening live, you can jump in the chat room as well and ask a question. The phone number is 603-967-4030. Where do you get your calls on? How does someone get a hold of you that has witnessed something?
We have a website, www.u4cop.com, and there's a contact thing at the bottom of the page where they can send in their report, or if they just want information. We'll analyze photographs for people. We'll research our databases for something maybe somebody's looking for from the past or present. Tell people where they can get stuff. I mean, we operate a little differently. We're pretty much open to everybody. We'll help anybody. We've traveled pretty much all over the eastern half of the country, and we do conferences. We don't charge for that. We do a lot of speaking engagements. We don't charge for that. So it works out very well. I mean, I think that the groups years past got away from dealing with the public, except for,
yes,
you know what I'm saying? They more or less deal with the next book they're going to write or the next white paper they're going to print, and they kind of left that getting really involved with the case. That kind of went by the wayside.
So let's hear a situation where you have used some of this equipment in your trucks and trying to solve a situation.
Well, a lot of times they are, let's say we're going out and we're going to do a Star Watch. We'll set up canopies, tables, get our computers out, and set up all the cameras, get the infrared out, get everything out we need, and that's pretty much done at almost everything we go to. Not so much that we'll set up cameras, but if we think that, an individual seeing something, weekly or monthly or a certain time of the day or during a certain type of weather. We've gone out in snowstorms already where a guy said he kept seeing flashing lights off in the distance. So we went out and we sat in the truck and we watched and we got our photographs and went in there and told him he was watching a tower flashing red.
And, the thing, I live on top of a mountain, and another mountain over there is a tower that's flashing, and when it's like snow or something like that, the light really does carry. So I totally understand. But you would think that if you live there, that you'd be used to that.
Yeah, and the guy lived there for like 30 years. So either he really wasn't paying attention or he never looked in that direction before.
That is really
we've
funny.
recently gone on, we have a lot of sightings right now, a lot of reports, not sightings, but reports in Pennsylvania of a cryptid type of creature that we've already had one expedition. We got 3, 4, 5, 6 more scheduled in different parts of PA. Most of them are occurring in central Pennsylvania, of people seeing this unknown creature of sorts. And when we went out there, their technology was beat because the woods were so thick that I had one of my guys walk in 5 steps and I lost him. So cameras would have been useless. So it was just one of those sit for a couple of days and listen and see if we could pick up anything that way. And we walked around with thermal imaging devices, which we have on the trucks, and the thermal cameras picked up nothing. So I thought that kind of strange, being that I was in the middle of 4,500 acres of prime game land that was just teeming with animals. And we heard nothing, saw nothing, didn't hear one sound, had nothing recorded on any of the cameras that we did have up, like the GoPros and stuff.
Yeah.
So now we went a little different this time. We just got cameras, 2 new cameras. They're surveillance cameras, and they'll take a photograph every half second. And they cover a 150-degree angle, wide angle. So with 2 of those, we should be able to pick up a pretty large piece of real estate and photograph it.
Now, I heard Stan, I was talking to Stan Gordon, and there's he was saying how many different, like, cryptic things are going on in Pennsylvania. And this one particular person that was reporting this unusual, I think that's what you used. What can you describe what they thought they were seeing?
Well, every report we have, everybody describes the same thing. We don't have anybody that veers off from this original description that we started back in July of 2014. 7 to 8 foot tall, massive chest, muscular arms with hands, hawk dog's legs, very thin-waisted, wolf-like head, glowing yellow eyes, and it stands its ground. It does not run. It does not hide.
And they're all saying the same thing, and there's no way this could be some type of hoax?
Nope. No way. These people have no idea. And what really set me straight on that in the very beginning of the research, which is it's going into its 3rd year now, is the fact that I found reports, exact reports, that I could match up against the report that I got 2 months ago from 1865 in western Pennsylvania.
Oh, jeez. Now, someone posted up on the message board the Jersey Devil. Does that have anything to do with this?
No, totally different. This is more, I saw somebody just posted werewolf. Yeah, you could probably get it close to more of a werewolf or maybe a skinwalker. Because, like Bigfoot, they hide. They don't want to be seen. This thing, if you see it, and like the last guy that saw one, he was just walking in, and they all take place in a state park. No place outside of a state park do we have any. These are all taking place in heavily wooded areas, game areas, and state open park areas, which are very large parks. And the last guy was standing less than 30 feet away when he saw it, and it never took his eyes off him. He kept his eyes on it, and he started backing out. And it just stared at him. It just followed him all the way out the trail with its eyes. And, this guy still shakes and shammers when he talks to me about it. So
I can't imagine seeing something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm hoping to see something like that, but I just don't really, to be honest with you and your listeners, I don't have any idea what I'm looking at or what I'm looking for. Because, number one, there's protocols for investigating the paranormal. There are protocols for investigating a UFO sighting. There's no protocol for investigating anything like this.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
And, the indigenous population of the United States, the Cherokee especially, use, the wolf is mostly their sightings as a wolf creature with their skinwalkers. And skinwalkers are not very nice. I mean, they're very dangerous from what we've gathered from those folks out there in Oklahoma and from what we've read up on. And, what it is, I have no idea. I'm trying to keep an open mind about it, and until I get something on film, which is probably all I'm going to be able to do, I really don't even know what I'm looking for.
Now, is there any Native American culture in that area? When I think of Skinwalker.
In Pennsylvania, we had no white men in Pennsylvania until 1754. Up until then, this was Indian territory. Mm-hmm. There were, I believe, 9 tribes. Susquehannock were the biggest. There were Iroquois, Mohawk, Susquehannock, Delaware. So the Susquehannock were the biggest. They were the warringest tribes. They were at war with everybody. And, it's so the place is full of burial grounds. And when we contacted people, indigenous out in Oklahoma, and talked to a medicine man and a chief, they told us that, being that the ground was just loaded with burial sites, that you could be dealing with a skinwalker that is basically guarding over those sites. And he warned us right up front, don't touch anything, don't take anything. If you do find something, don't take it, leave it lay. And they sent us some stuff to help protect us, which I have no idea what that's all about, but we will do what they say. And only because I have no idea what to do. I mean, I'm out there throwing technology at something that I don't even know I'm throwing it at. I have no idea.
Excuse me, pardon me. So we try to stick, this kind of thing really fascinates me, and we do try to stick more to the UFO topic because we have a lot of people listen to the show for that particular reason. But I don't care if we spin off a little bit here and there on things like that. Sure. It really is interesting to me, and it just goes along with UFOs in a way that is just another unexplainable.
Yeah, and like one person said to me, how do we know that it's not something from a UFO or from the paranormal? Right now, linking the paranormal into one big subject, which would be ufology, cryptozoology, and of course ghost hunting, is not so far away. There have been paranormal events that have taken place where lights have been seen in the sky. There have been lights seen in the sky where something strange took place on the ground, whether it was a crypto sighting or a paranormal event. So I don't think they're that far apart anymore. I mean, at one time they held their own separate little rooms, but I just don't see that anymore. I mean, more and more researchers are trying to connect one with the other, where I just read an article where a ghost hunting group, and that's all they do is hunt ghosts, they are now setting up cameras facing the sky while they're doing what they're doing. And they're trying to see if anything goes on in the place that they're investigating inside, if anything's going on in the sky outside, which I thought was a pretty neat trick. Mm-hmm. Might give it.
Excuse me. One of the things, I think UFOs gets a little bit of a separation. Now, I do realize there's a heck of a lot of unexplained things. I've had a few things happen in my life that were unexplainable, that were really interesting, still are. But I think UFOs are a little different in a way that, the mass sightings, the radar returns, all that, whatever it is, that there seem to be so much closer to grasp than some of the other things that we encounter, like ghosts and crypto.
Well, sure, and one of the biggest things is, I mean, you can look at tons of evidence on UFOs. I mean, we still get, on the average, about 7 or 8 reports of glowing orange orbs in our state. We've got a very good picture of one, which was taken by a student at a university. We have, triangles. Triangles and orbs right now in the last, I would say, 3 years are the most that we're getting reports on.
Right.
The last one being one of my guys, who's actually a police officer, was coming home from work, and he spotted one crossing the highway above him. and turned around and tried to follow it as long as he could.
You talking
but it
about
was
a
moving very
triangle
slowly.
or an orb?
No, this was a triangle.
Yeah.
And very large, and it just. He said it was so large it had to make a noise, but it made no noise whatsoever. Because he stopped the car and got out right along the highway, and he said, I didn't hear a thing. And he said it passed right over top of me. And it had two very small lights in the middle, which really weren't any particular color. He said it was like looking at an old lava lamp, if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
And then not too long after that sighting, we had another one in Exeter, Pennsylvania, which is right down the road from the other sighting, of a similar object, again a triangle, but it was followed by three orbs above it, and the orbs were red in color.
Yeah.
And they got some pictures, but they used a phone camera, and it didn't really outline the triangle. You could see the orbs, but not make out the triangle too well.
Yeah. Now, there was some up on the chat room. There are people saying that one guy says, "I missed the saucers." I love that.
Well, you know what? There hasn't been. I haven't seen or read of any reports of saucers in years. I mean, they're either coming through as cigar shape, triangle, squares, orbs. Mm-hmm. Another one that started popping up about 2 years ago was a long flat rectangle. So I don't, the classic saucer, I haven't seen one of those reports in years. I've seen some photographs that were taken or supposedly taken recently, but when you look at the photographs, you can, it'll take you 5 minutes to figure out that they were photoshopped.
Wow. That was the sighting I had in 2006, was definitely a disc. And, you're right. I've talked about that a number of times, that it seems like, maybe that's the old model and the new model is the triangle. This year's model. But no, it's really strange. I think it's strange that it would change, or that we'd be seeing something different. And that could be something simple, like if we are being visited from another species out there. Let's just say, I never like to say we are definitely, it's definitely extraterrestrial. I'd say it's most likely, or it could be. But,
well, when you investigate this stuff, after a while, you better have a really open mind. Mm-hmm. Because I know I've read things, I've seen things, I've been involved in things that, for the life of me, with all the technology we have, I can't figure out. Nobody else can either. And I've got 64 people that I can show this to or talk to about something, and if they can't come up with anything, and I can't come up with anything, it's just another thing that's unexplainable. But when you see something travel across the sky from horizon to horizon, zigzagging all the way in a matter of an eye blink or two, that's not ours. We don't have anything that fast. Mm-hmm. Or you're standing there talking with a state trooper, and he says, "Oh, what's that?" And you see something zigzagging, and it stops, drops, makes a U, and comes back up and then continues on its way, and he doesn't think anything of it because he sees them all the time. That's the first time I've ever seen one in my life like that. Uh-huh. So, it's whatever's out there, whether it be ufology, the paranormal, or cryptozoology, we have answers for some things, and we have others that we have no answers for.
Yeah. I know, and, that's one of the main reasons I like to do this show, is just to, I'm not thinking that it's most likely that I will ever know what the heck is going on, but it's always, the interesting part is to explore, hear people's sightings, and also people's ideas on what they may be seeing or what they possibly could be. That's one of the things that really keeps me in it.
Yeah, and I like calling myself a skeptical believer because, without the evidence or proof, you're just telling me another story. Mm-hmm. And I've heard and read thousands of those. I try to stay on a level path with this. it could be this, it could be that, or it could not be this, or it could not be that. And then, make up my own mind, write my report, and that's it.
Now, while we're on this subject along these lines, why do you think someone in the science field doesn't want to try to really look at this hard? Now, there are some people, but it's few and far in between.
Well, it's the same, most likely the same reason that the government's never going to disclose anything. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, disclosure is going to happen next week, next month, next year. You're never going to have any disclosure because for them to disclose, they'd have to admit to lying for the last 50 or so years.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with scientists who've been poo-pooing it now for whatever time. If it came to those guys, their credibility would be shot in a millisecond. So it's easier to stand there and be a skeptic than it is to be a prover of truth and evidence. And even then, when you do come out with proof and evidence, somebody will come after you and say you manufactured it. It's just a big hassle.
Yeah.
So I think, I often laugh. People say, well, when do you think there'll be disclosure? I said, when one of those things lands in some farmer's yard, and he's smart enough to call the news before he calls the police.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I had a conversation a while ago with Dr. Melba Ketchum, the Bigfoot DNA research. And, she a very nice lady, by the way, and she just, threw caution to the wind, and all her background and many years of her work that she has done, she can now no longer testify in court. Many things because she just took this subject seriously, and that's what can happen. And she's had death threats. She's had a place where she was going to speak. Someone actually bombed it just prior to when she was going to be there. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing. Where people can just people don't want to have something big like this looked at seriously, it seems.
Well, no, they don't because, first of all, look at how many folks, but let me put it to you this way. I have 12 books here on my shelf I'm looking at in amongst 1,500 of them, but there's 12 on the shelf I keep separately. They're all written by different authors. They're all on Roswell crash, every one of them. Which one am I supposed to believe?
Are they all, pardon me, are they all different accountings?
All different. Every one is different by a different author, so which one do I believe?
Good point, yeah.
And you have this guy says this, and then this guy says, well, that guy's nuts. This is what really happened. And then that guy says, this guy's crazy because that's not what happened. The first guy was right or sort of right, but my idea is better. And then they wonder why people are confused when they talk about UFOs or they talk to people about UFOs. They've been fed garbage for so long that, I would say out of all these books, there might be a dozen or two that I may say would be close to factual. And then when you find out that the people who wrote these books never saw a UFO or never went out in the field and investigated a UFO, that's a little disheartening to me.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think there are some good people out there that are trying to do a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. There are people out there that do an excellent job. MUFON has a crapload of good investigators, but they're kind of hampered because when they do an investigation, that investigation ends when they turn it into a CMS file.
Well,
and that's the end of it.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I don't want to MUFON bash, but there's...
Oh, no, absolutely not.
But I actually do get a lot of contacts from people that are that do feel that way and feel like a lot of things are not available to do more work on, and that's one of the things.
But people have to understand that you're talking about an organization that's got a lot of folks, and if they had to equip those people and get them all out in the field, that would be tons of money. Mm-hmm. And the independent researchers, like J.C. Johnson that investigates paranormal things out in the four corners of this country, he's self-funded, and he travels all over 4 states. But if he was with MUFON or any other large group, he couldn't do that because they're not going to fund him to do that. You know, they're not going to fund my $90,000 truck with equipment out there. No way. So, although there are, and we have MUFON members in my group, and they're very good, and they've been there a long time, and they know what they're doing. And but I give them more access and the benefit of having the equipment they need on the spur of the moment, which I don't think MUFON can do till this day. They couldn't when I was involved as a STAR team member and a chief investigator. They couldn't do it then. I don't think they could do it now.
So when you were an investigator, did you ever hear any rumblings of, the possible CIA connection with MUFON?
Oh yeah, I think that probably started at day number 2 after they started MUFON. Look, everybody's going to look for something to discredit somebody. It doesn't matter. They'll say, MUFON's owned by Bob Bigelow, or MUFON is a government agency in a clandestine operation. MUFON throws away their reports. That's all silly. That's not factual. MUFON is just a big organization that collects a lot of data and has a lot of investigators out there collecting data. So as far as that goes, I give them kudos because I did it with them. I did it for them. And it takes a lot of work, and it's out-of-pocket expenses, not as much as doing it on your own, but they'll be around for a long time. I mean, I know people are saying that I've heard and I've read on the internet that, they're going to, just getting done. They're just going to fold. They're going to do this, and it's going to happen next month and next month and next month. That's silly. It's just nonsense. MUFON will be around a long time. It's a good operation. How they control all those people is beyond me. I don't know what they have, 3,500 members or something like that. It's crazy.
It's about 3,500, right?
That's just crazy.
Yeah. Now we actually had a guest on the show, and he does listen to the show, who actually had first-hand incident that happened right in front of them, was a actual tie at one point. This is going back into the 1980s, where a convention. If you are listening, and you are welcome to call in and share your story once more. He was on a while back. 603-967-4030 is the number if anyone wants to call in and ask our guest a question. So I don't know, the thing you do hear is that they were infiltrated or whatever because they wanted to know what information that was being gathered out there. Whether that's true or whether they'd even bother, I have no idea.
Why would they bother? I mean, they got the CIA, the DOD, they got spooks all over the place. If they wanted to find out something about you, me, or anybody else, or any group that's out there, they could do that without them ever knowing about it. They wouldn't have to buy the business or, infiltrate the business. They could just do it. End of story. They could watch all their email. They could watch every conversation. They could listen to everything they're saying, and they wouldn't know the difference. So I think that's just, the conspiracy theorists kind of make me crazy. Because
I was just going to ask you if I sounded like a conspiracist.
Well, you could make a conspiracy. Give me your birth date, and I'll make a conspiracy out of it. You can make a conspiracy out of anything, but when you want to get to the real bottom line, you got to deal with fact, fact and evidence. That's what you need. You need to have the evidence. You need to have the facts. Could it happen? Did it not happen? Go to the scene. Talk to the people face to face. I don't do any interviews with anybody unless they're out of state or they're too far away to go over the internet or by phone. I try to do everything face to face because I can see what they're talking about. I can see what facts they're going to present. I'm looking at them right in the eye, and they're showing me what they saw or where they saw it, and I can, do a lot of things to find out if that could happen or not. That circle in their yard that's been growing now over the damp season for the last 2 years is mold. I even carry a sample of it to show them. so it's not a crop circle, or it's not a landing site of a UFO. And, we've investigated, a little over 2,500 cases now since 2009.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the cases you've investigated. But before that, before you make the trip out to actually speak to someone, what type of preliminary information do you need before you actually pack up your truck and go there?
Okay, what we'll do is we'll, of course, take the original location, and then we'll do a background on the location, see if there are any other sightings in that area, that county, that street, or whatever, and try to get as much as we can historically, doing some background research from years back. I'll go back sometimes 5 or 10 years. And if there's the same lights being seen in the same time, in the same place, over a period of 5 or 10 years, well, then I'm probably dealing with something that's man-made. Mm-hmm. Especially when somebody gives you explicit directions like, I see it in the northwest sky every once a month or something like that. It usually turns out to be either a satellite or a planet. And then you have weather is very important.
Yep.
And then when you get on the scene, and you hear the story, now did the story change from the time I got the report to the time now that I'm on the scene? That's another kicker that gets me. The story changes. Or we get a Me Tooism. And the Me Tooism is the neighbor coming over when he sees the truck parked out front and says, yeah, I saw it. Me too. I saw it. Mm-hmm. But background research is very important before you even get to the scene. I mean, you have to know what the background is of the area. Is there an Air Force base, or is there a testing area for missiles nearby, or is there anything nearby that could cause what they saw? And then you just take it from there and then just follow up on it and just keep going until you come to your conclusion.
Yeah, with everything you have invested in your time, you want to make sure no one's going to waste it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I've had it wasted, but sometimes the waste is good because something will always come up where they'll say, well, the guy that owns the bar down the street, he saw something one time and you go down to the bar and you talk to that guy. And he may put you in a better direction, or maybe he'll back up what the other guy said, or vice versa.
Yeah, right. Now, someone just in the message room wanted to know, what are some of the cases you've investigated?
Well, we have some active ones right now that have been going on for years. I see a lot on your chat room about Todd Cease. That's still an ongoing case. The Todd Cease case started in 2008, and we've been on it ever since. We have a cold case unit that works the case. And it's probably the strangest case I've ever investigated on anything.
I'm not familiar with it, and I imagine.
I can give you. I'll give you a quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Todd Cease was a gentleman, 34 years old, that one morning, as he did many times during pre-deer season, would get on his ATV and go up into the woods, a very heavily wooded area in Northumberland, Pennsylvania, and look for deer, spot deer for the coming season. He was an avid archer. And he was last seen that day at 1 a.m. and got on his ATV and took off into the woods and told his wife he'd be back like at, somebody just corrected me, 39. Yeah, okay. Trying to remember everything about this case from the beginning. He went into the wooded area and didn't return. And at 2 o'clock, the family got nervous, and the wife called the police, reported him missing. Family members showed up, brothers, father, and they all went looking for him, son, trying to find him. They couldn't find him. They did locate the ATV. They saw the ATV, which was approximately 1 mile from the home. They couldn't bring it back because they couldn't find the keys, and they wound up towing it back later. But the search went on. About 235 searchers, we found out, were the actual searchers that showed up, which would have been local police, 3 fire companies, 2 search dog teams, one cadaver dog and one set of cadaver dogs and one set of bloodhounds. There was a state police helicopter in the sky. There were state troopers on the scene also. Many people that knew him, a lot of folks, relatives, everybody out looking for him. And nobody finds this guy. And a lot of this stuff, we have not posted very much on this case on the internet because it's still ongoing. But everything that we have gotten on the case, we don't rely on the original reporting of the case, which was all taken from a newspaper, which was doctored many times and has now been taken off the newspaper archives since we've been investigating. Everything we've gotten so far in the last 6 years is in black and white. We've had everything done where we didn't ask anybody for a phone answer. We got everything on their letterheads. We have the autopsy report. We have the toxicology report. And what happened was that they didn't find him the first day. The second day, they didn't find him till it was about 7-something in the evening, 7:54, I believe it was, that the body was located. He was identified and removed from the scene. Autopsy followed, and he was found to have died of a cocaine toxicology, overdose of cocaine. Now, kind of a simple thing, right? But it turns out that he had no drug abuse background. We could find no arrest records other than a traffic ticket. All his personal information, like on the Social Security death site and military records, driver's license, hunting license, none of that even appears anymore anywhere. He's pretty much been wiped clean. Family doesn't talk about it. Family lied to us a couple times. We caught them on that, and it's all in black and white. I mean, it was emails back and forth with family members. The coroner lied to us. The police lied to us. Police said they were the investigating team. It turned out they weren't. The state police were. The body was in, how can I say this? The body was in horrendous shape when it was found. It was in the way advanced stages of decomposition. And the kicker is that this body was only 20 yards from the house when it was found.
Oh, jeez. So where does the cocaine play into this whole thing?
Well, that's what was given as the cause of death.
And it's a mystery because he had no background, no...
Not only did he have no background, but when we took all the toxicology reports and stuff that we have directly from where they were supposed to come from, the coroner, when we took all that official paperwork to other doctors and pathologists, they said the amount of cocaine, degraded cocaine that was in his body would have killed him within a matter of a couple minutes. Huh. There is no way he could have walked from that ATV back to his house. And besides that, if you have a decomposing body in the middle of the summer, laying in your backyard, 20 foot from your back door, and 15 feet from the road that all these searchers were driving up and walking up to get to the search scene, didn't smell this guy? Yeah. Cadaver dogs? I've worked with cadaver dogs. They can find a body 6 foot under dirt, no problem. They can find a body underwater. So...
I'm going to say this. Did David Pallades ever look into this?
No.
Do you know who
David?
You know?
Yeah, I know David very well. David is more on the missing persons end of it. This guy wasn't really a missing person, but for, I forget how many hours now off the top of my head, but he, this is a guy whose background had nothing to do with drugs of any type. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to kill this guy for whatever reason, in that area, you could walk up in the middle of the night or when he went up there, like 5 a.m. or whatever it was, and shot him in the head. Nobody would have paid any attention because the place is loaded with rattlesnakes. They have the rattlesnake roundup there every year. So gunshots going off day and night in those woods means nothing. Or you could have just walked up and hit him in the head with a hammer. You know?
Yeah.
So how does this happen that the guy disappears and nobody sees this guy or smells this guy? Well, then the family said, well, it rained that day. Well, I was quite quick to pronounce, I could check that in a matter of minutes. Check that, and I said, yeah, it did rain that day. She said, that's why they didn't smell him. I said, well, that's a little hard to believe because your area for that day only received 0.01 inches of rain. That doesn't even get my windshield wet.
Now, this is becoming familiar to me, I believe. Was he like either mangled or something was really weird about him as well?
His what?
Was he like mangled or something?
No.
Or charred?
No. In the very first information that came out about this case was a UFO researcher, Peter Davenport, that was garnering all his information from the newspaper. And, the newspaper lady said she was even one of the people that, in her original news articles, which are no longer available, she took them all off, said that she identified him. Well, then the chief of police said he identified him. Then the father said he identified him. Then the brother said he identified him. And then a local police officer, he identified him. So we have all these 5 or 6 people identified him. But till this day, we do not know who identified the body. That's
really strange. That sounds like a real bizarre case.
All his personal information is just missing. It's gone. It's not there. It's not there. His, on the Social Security Death Index, which anybody can look up your grandfather. It'll have who he was married to, when he got married, where he worked, where he lived, where he was born, where he went to school, all this information, how many kids he had, the names of the kids, when they were born. That's all in the Social Security Death Index. You know what's on his?
What?
J. Cease, born, blah, 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 died, blah, blah, blah. Rest, blank.
Very unusual.
No, that's not unusual. That's outrageous. I mean, there is nothing about this guy. Now, to get back to the beginning of the story, the day of the sighting, okay, a UFO report went in that said that there was an object above the power lines, which is where the ATV was found. There's a big power line that runs up along his property. He has 10 acres. And 2 fishermen and 1 farmer down the road say that they see what looks like to be a guy in his underwear being pulled up into this craft. Okay, and then the craft takes off. Now, when he is found, there are many people saying he was found like this, and he was found like this, and he was facing that way, and he's facing this way. Well, in the autopsy report, it tells you exactly how he was found. He was found in his cut-off shorts. He actually had started out with a full-body, what do they call them? A one-piece suit, camouflage.
Like a jumpsuit.
Well, when he is found in his cut-off jeans, a T-shirt, and socks.
Wow.
So that matches what that UFO report said that those gentlemen saw. Now, everybody plays off on that and says, well, this, that, and whatever. And I'm just reading some of the comments coming across your thing here. It just said the FBI was involved. No, the FBI was not involved. And local law enforcement had nothing to do with the case whatsoever. The case was handled by the Pennsylvania State Police, right down to the viewing of the autopsy and the taking of evidence from the autopsy scene. So a lot of stories floated about that, but I can tell you this. When I started this investigation, I had a little half-inch binder with about 20 pages in it. I now have 2 8-inch binders that are filled with documented evidence of what happened, who said what, when it happened, who was there, who wasn't, where the body was found. We've gone to the scene, to the house. The house was taken to sheriff's sale after it was actually sold by his wife, and then whoever bought it defaulted on their loan, and it was went to sheriff's sale. And we actually got to walk the property, photograph and video the property inside and out. And we found the tree was found under. It's the only dead tree on the property, and it's to be exact, it's 22.5 yards from the back door.
Yards,
And from this road that goes up along the house that takes you into the woods, where he would have went with his ATV to go up through there, he, I think it was 16 feet and 4 inches, right edge to edge of the tree to edge of the road. Now, to believe their story, or the story that's being told, all these researchers had to walk past this guy for 2 days. He's in a case of advanced decomposition that is impossible to happen in that short a period of time.
Sure seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's not strange. It's bizarre because everybody relates back to the original case. And even when I talked about it originally, I was wrong because I didn't have that information then that I have now. I didn't talk to people or family members or the coroner or the police or the state police or anything like that. We just had one of our guys up there last April. Mm-hmm. The police, he went to the police station to get information on a FOIA request that we sent, and we've not had one FOIA request from that police department answered. Not one. We haven't had one of our FOIA requests answered by the state police either. Mm-hmm. We've been told that they can't give that information out because it is an open case. Now, the death has been attributed to cocaine toxicity. So it's not an open case. The death has been documented as cocaine toxicity. So the only way you can keep an open case in the state of Pennsylvania is murder. Mm-hmm. So murder by who? Now that takes us in another direction. Did he owe somebody money? Was he messing around with somebody's wife? But I mean, it looks like they went to a great length to, put that much cocaine into a guy. I mean, if you're using cocaine, there are certain things that happen to the body. I mean, the heart especially, the lungs, the nose, different things fail, but they show a telltale sign. His body was as clean as a pin. Other than scrapes and bruises and bangs and knocks and a few lacerations, the body was pretty much undocumentable. He had no signs of enlarged heart or kidney issues or liver issues or nasal issues or throat issues, but yet he was this, according to them, this wild cocaine-using fanatic who, when we talked to the the Little League baseball team that he coached for many, many years, they just laughed at us and they said, look, this guy even had the slightest inkling of doing any kind of drugs. Do you think we'd let him around these kids? You're crazy. He said, this guy didn't die of cocaine. And here's the kicker. So from the time the body's picked up till the time it hits the autopsy table, we have 14 hours where we don't know where that body is.
Wow.
So.
What a crazy case.
You're
Absolutely
telling me,
crazy.
man.
Wow. And I know we're going into the second hour, ran a little long into this, but that's fine. I wanted to switch gears a little bit, but also kind of along this same subject. I want to talk, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, that we're going to go a bit off the UFO topic, and that is possibly off the UFO topic. Who knows? But human mutilations, kind of similar. Yes. But before we get into that, you mentioned that you also do a lot of abduction, or you do some abduction investigations. And
yes, we do.
That, to investigate an abduction must be much harder to do than a UFO sighting. How does that work?
Well, abduction cases are usually, an abduction case that really catches your mind are abduction cases that usually come from folks that all of a sudden have a recollection of something that happened 20 years ago, and they're not involved in ufology. They wouldn't know how to go buy a ufology book or an abduction book if they had to. They're distraught. They're pretty much physically and mentally destroyed by it. They're very, they know what they saw, they know what they went through, and they describe it in very great detail. They don't, how should I say, they don't flutter around with descriptions of what they thought may have happened to them. They're pretty much right on the money. And a lot of things happened in childhood. A lot of things happened, that you just shaking your head, it's like, wow. And when you do get into one that's a really good case, you'll find that it wasn't only that child that was seemingly abducted, but it was the brother, the sister, the mother, the uncle, the father, the grandfather. It ran through the whole family. And that's when you start bringing in specialists. I start bringing in people that's all they do. I'll take all the initial stuff, and then I'll transmit that to one of our folks, maybe in Florida or Georgia, who that's all they do and have done for many, many years. As a matter of fact, Denise Stoner, one of the folks that runs our Florida group, her and Kathleen Martin wrote a book together on abductions, and she's very active with MUFON as an abduction specialist. So I really take it so far, and then I'll turn it over to them. And if they're busy, then it'll go to Dr. David Jacobs.
Now, when you were saying you go through all this, you hear, or I hear everywhere that it's like more and more and more people are claiming.
Yes.
And you're seeing that as well?
Yes, we've had I'm going to say, to be on the safe side, about a 20% increase in the last 2 years of abduction reports.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty high.
That's a lot.
And, I hear the numbers. Sometimes you hear people say, possibly in the millions, and just, like a percentage of our society. Mm-hmm. You hear this, and I don't know, even if a small, tiny, well, let's just put it this way, even if one out of those supposed millions actually was abducted, that would be big-time news.
Well, when I first started doing statistics, trying to find out just about how many people were ever reported missing, I mean, that set me back in my chair. I couldn't talk for 20 minutes. I went back to 2008. Yeah. I used the NCI statistics, which is the National Crime Information Center put out by the FBI. That means that when people see in their newspaper, or they might get a blurb or something on the internet, they'll say that, that such and such town, here's their crime report for the last year. Well, they always run a year behind. So, and on that report, which every police department in this country, I don't care if sheriff, state police, local police, it doesn't matter. If they're law enforcement, they have to fill this form out. And on the form, it'll ask questions. It's kind of like yes or no, or how many. How many bicycles were stolen? How many rapes did you have? How many murders occurred? How many gun thefts did you have? That kind of stuff. And that's how they tally the crime statistics for the country. Okay? Mm-hmm. Pretty simple. And also on there is missing person reports, murders, runaways, the whole bit. So I went back and researched that. It's open to the public. Anybody can do it. So I started in 1991. And I did the first research in 2008, and I came up with, it had 778,164 missing persons filed. Now, 95% of those are found, not like David's stuff. I was just going to
ask you about that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
About 95% are found, not like David's part where pretty much nobody's ever found. Now, about 75% of those are runaways under the age of 18. Mm-hmm. About 20% are spousal abuse, murders, elderly walkaways, ransom, kidnapping, that kind of stuff. But 5% are never found. So that, just for 2008, that means that 38,908 people were never found.
Wow. Okay?
So I went back to 1991 and totaled all the missing reports from 1991, and that came up to 13,861,065. Using the same math, with that 5%, it showed that 693,053 people are never found. No trace. Man, woman, child. No clothing, no body, no nothing.
Now, if they were found like 5 years later, would it, like living somewhere?
Yep, it would take it off. It would take them off. Yep.
Wow.
Oh, in 17 years, you had 40,795 people gone off the face of this planet.
Totally amazing. And someone could be, say, murdered and buried or something like that.
All that stuff. Yeah. But the 5% means that they've never been found. No trace has ever been found. No body, no parts, no clothing, nothing. And we're not talking about criminals here or wild maniacs or anything like that. We're talking about everyday people. So now, the United States does this through the FBI. But now take a country like, say, South Africa, or just Africa, where whole villages have disappeared. They don't take any statistics. So whether there were 50 people in that village or 5,000 people in the village, they're gone. China doesn't do it. I mean, places that have these, Europe, nobody in Europe does this. So they have no idea how many people are missing. So if you look at the 40,700 a year since 1991, what's that say about the rest of the world? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing, really is. And it's pretty scary, actually.
Yes, it is.
Think about it. So now I heard one of the lectures I listened to what you were talking about. You got into the human mutilations. And where do you think the connections, how does all that fit into everything?
Well, back in the early 60s, rumors were all about, they came to the forefront of human corpses were being found with strange wounds, like the same type found in cattle mutilations. Mm-hmm. And they were just dismissed as in bad taste by most ufologists. Nobody wanted to get involved in that. Until today, it's still the black part of ufology that's really never talked about. But I started looking into it because I was looking at actually cattle mutilations, and I started coming up with all these cases, and I felt like, wow, man, there's a lot of cases here. So the one that really struck home right off the get-go was the Guadaparanga Dam in Brazil case, and took place in 1988. The Guadaparanga Dam is a man-made dam that supplies water to Sao Paulo. Mm-hmm. A very great fishing spot for the locals also. So a couple guys in a boat are out doing their fishing thing, and they spot what they see is a body, looks like a body on the shore. So instead of being like most people would go check it out, these guys went and got the cops. So the cops showed up, and they show up with a forensic team. Yay for our side. That doesn't usually happen. So at the crime scene, this guy is found with the following items surgically removed: his eyes, his left ear, his inner ear, lower jaw, inner throat and tongue. There are 1 inch to 1.5 inch holes in the following areas of his body, which were the muscle, tissue, glands, all removed: shoulder, chest, navel, thigh, testicles removed, prostrate gland was removed via the urethral tube. Intestines were removed via a hole in the navel. Anus was cored out to the colon. Body presented no signs of bloating, which in itself I think is pretty remarkable due to the high heat in that area at that time of year. He should have been blown up like a balloon. And there was no body odor whatsoever. Neither was there any blood found at the scene other than some speckles of blood around the wounds themselves. He is laying there. All the photos are taken. The body was never touched till everything was done. So it was really done properly in the right order. And then we get the autopsy report, which was made public years afterwards. And the death was due to massive trauma. Now, the really strange parts about this is just the opposite of Todd Cease. Todd was dead 40 to 44, something like that, 50 hours or something like that. But the time of death placed on this guy was 40 to 72 hours before discovery. No bloating, no livor mortis, no rigor mortis, no noticeable blood at the scene. And one of the things that pops up in the autopsy report is the term vital reaction. Now, vital reaction would use, a lot of lawyers, police use that because the term vital reaction really indicates the response of a living body tissue to an injury. So if I take a knife and I stab you in the arm, you're going to pull away. Well, when you pull away, you're going to cause some ripping, tearing, blacking, blue around the wound and stuff like that. And it's really importance in forensic medicine because it helps to attempt to establish that an injury was inflicted before death or after death. So in other words, if you're dead and I take a knife and stick it in you, there's just going to be a hole from the knife. No blood, no bleeding, no black and blue or anything like that. But one of the things that vital reaction does mean is that in this case, when they did the autopsy, when they removed the skull, they saw massive hematomas, many hematomas, very small, but many of them. That would only be found in a very, like, say, a crushing injury where somebody was pinned in a car or crushed against a wall with a piece of machinery. They didn't die right away. They were alive, and all this pain, they're going through all this pain, agony in their brain, and all of a sudden these small blood vessels start to burst. And that really means that when this took place, when this guy was, I'll use butchered for a better use of any other word, he was alive.
Ouch. Boy.
Now, we have one animal mutilation like that. The case of Snippy. I can't remember Snippy's real name, but that was the name the newspaper gave this horse. The investigators are on the scene, and the horse is laying on its side, and the one investigator says, there's something strange here. He says, in his words, he said, the eyes were removed, and the viscous fluid should have run off. The horse laying on its left, it should have ran off to the left side, correct? And the guy goes, yeah. He said, well, look at this. And he's looking at the horse, and the viscous fluid actually ran straight down the nose and off the end of the nose. So the horse was upright when its eyes were removed.
Jeez.
So the horse was alive.
God.
Now, there's a researcher in Puerto Rico who's working on this now for about, I don't know how many years, probably a lot longer than I'm alive, maybe. And he says he thinks that our space brethren are going after endorphins. Now, what causes endorphins? If I run up to you and I say, damn, Martin, here's $1 million check. It's all yours, cash. Just go spend it. Your endorphins are going to go nuts, right?
They just did.
The same thing would happen. Same thing would happen if I put your hand in a vice and start to turn the vice closed. Your endorphins would go crazy. So it's a good reaction, bad reaction. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to put this together with these human mutilations. Now, there are a number of mutilations that have taken place. I mean, there's a number of cases. They've had them. They've been documented back in over in England, back into the 14th, 15th century, where they found a local who disappeared, and 24 hours later, somebody found him hanging in a tree, and he had these strange holes in his body, and parts of the body interior were missing. There's a number of those. Another case that was really fascinating, I did get to talk to the lawyer that was handling the case for the gentleman, was in Cairo, Egypt, in an area called Beni Mazar, which is right outside of Cairo. This took place in 2005, where 3 families were butchered, exactly like this guy. Everything in the house was butchered. I think if they had goldfish, they were butchered. Everything was gone. Everybody was killed. Man, women, children, dogs, cats, whatever.
Yes.
And they blamed it on a gentleman who was retarded, mentally retarded, had the mentality of about a 4 or 5 year old, didn't even know his own name, lived 35 miles from the scene of the crime, and they pinned the crime on him. Well, they had no other suspects, so he was likely. And that case drug on for years, and then finally, they got him acquitted. And I did get to talk to his lawyer, and till this day, till right now, if this guy wants to go outside, I don't care if he wants to go out, outside of his property line. He wants to go outside that wall and take a walk on the street, they have to call the police. A police officer will come and escort him. If he's going to go to the mosque to pray, police. Shopping, police. And if he doesn't call the police and he goes outside those parameters, he will be locked up for life.
And this is someone who was acquitted?
He was acquitted, yes.
Unreal. Wow.
But those were the conditions of him being acquitted.
I see.
These things have to take place till he dies.
Jeez. Wow.
This guy can't even tie his own shoes.
Yeah, and 35 miles away, that's...
35 miles away. He has to have help to eat, to go to the bathroom, to take a bath. I mean, this guy is basically a walk-in bowl of vegetable soup. And to do all the things that were done to the guy in Brazil, or like are done to cattle, which are pretty much exactly the same organs taken, same parts, all taken the same way. Bingo. There's a guy that nailed with it.
Now, I have heard, I don't think anyone has talked about the human mutilations on this show. I've had Chris O'Brien and a few other people, Linda Moulton Howe, I think, talked about it a little bit on this show before. Sure. But one of the things that Chris O'Brien said, a lot of times there is blood in the corpse of the cattle. It's just everything, settles to gravity.
Yes.
But
not that much.
Okay.
I mean, if you've ever seen a cow butchered, you won't believe the amount of blood that comes out of that animal.
Right.
I went to an abattoir just to see because I'd never seen it before, so I went to see it. When they open that animal up, I mean, the floor, which is probably in a room about 16 by 18, is covered in blood from one animal.
Hope no one's eating right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But you have Chuck Witkowski, who's a longtime researcher. Remember MUFON? As a matter of fact, he's the cattle researcher for MUFON. And Chuck has also found, small pools of blood here and there. But that's stuff that's draining out of small veins. I mean, we're not talking about we're talking about an animal that's been, opened up front, rear, top, bottom, and you got this a cup or so of blood. Well, what happened to the gallons that were in there? They're not on the ground. They're not on the ground. And places where these animals have been found, many years have gone by, where you can go to that exact spot and nothing is growing there. I mean, it could be in the middle of a wheat field, and that animal carcass where it laid, there's nothing growing where that carcass laid. So, although there are not many researchers that do cattle mutilation, they pretty much all have the same thing going as far as what they do. And one of the things Chuck was really excited about was he had an EMF detector, and he was actually getting a hit on a cow recently killed, and this thing was moving. Whatever it was inside this cow's body was moving, and he was picking it up on an EMF detector. Wow. So there was something electromagnetic in that cow that was moving around in that cow, and when he got to the other side, it disappeared. And he went back where he started, and it wasn't there anymore.
Stranger and stranger. Now, what are you mentioned that there's a lot of similarities between human mutilations and cattle?
Yes.
And
the anal areas are cored out, the ears are cut, eyes are missing, lower jaw. One of the strangest cases I worked on was actually a horse in North Dakota, where a lady was riding in an indoor ring. If anybody's familiar with riding horses in an indoor ring, those rings are pristine. There's no sharp objects or anything like that. They're very smooth, so the rider or the animal does not get hurt. So she stops the horse in the middle of her little thing to go get something out of the tack room. The tack room is 75 feet from where she left the horse standing. Okay? When she comes back, I don't know how long it takes to walk 75 feet, got whatever she got and came back. But when she comes back, the horse's jaw is opened up from right below the ear all the way down. The flap is hanging open, and the lower part of its jaw is missing. Jeez. The horse is bleeding very little. The horse is not screaming. It's not running around. It's standing exactly where she left it. They call a vet. Vet says there's nothing I can do for this horse. They had to put the horse down. And when she sent me those pictures, I couldn't believe it. So right away, somebody said, well, he ran into a nail. Well, there are no nails in a riding ring. There's nothing in a riding ring that would injure a horse or a rider because, you're riding around in a ring. There's nothing there. There's just walls. And they're smooth walls, either wood or metal or whatever, but there's no place where the horse went. I mean, the horse was right where she left him. And he never let out a howl or scream or,
that just doesn't make any sense.
You slap a horse good with a stick, that horse is going to yell.
Yeah.
Now, imagine this horse is standing there while somebody removes its lower jaw.
Unbelievable.
And opens it up. I mean, this horse is opened up like it was hit with a saber. So.
That is crazy. Now, there's a couple of questions up on the message board, and one is, what does the EMF detector mean that would be moving inside the cow?
The only thing that Chuck's thing was that there was something giving off an electromagnetic pulse. Could have been anything. I mean, your microwave will give off EMF. Your watch will give off EMF. Your monitor will give off EMF. Electromagnetic fields are everywhere, but why would there be an electromagnetic field in a cow?
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I mean, there's no natural anomaly that could be associated with that inside of, like, a living being?
No. You can take an EMF detector unless you have a pacemaker. An EMF detector will just give, just like radiation. If I put a radiation detector against your body, I'm just going to pick up residual radiation, which could be from your clothing, from the air, or anything else. But to make an EMF detector move, there has to be an electromagnetic pulse.
I see. Wow.
Electromagnetic pulse in a cow that was dead.
Amazing. So Phil asks on the message board, how many human mutilations have there been reported?
To date, best we know, we don't have a whole lot from England, other than the fact that they gave us like 7 cases to look at. In this country, I can tell you that in a second here. I believe it's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11.
In this country?
Yes.
And are there variances, or are they just a lot of similarities?
Pretty much similar. The one that would be closest to the gentleman in Brazil was the New Zealand case in 1994, where a gentleman was found basically identically cut up just like this other guy in Brazil.
Jeez. Amazing.
They go back to 1956 in New Mexico at Air Force Base in New Mexico, Holloman Air Force Base. Sergeant J.P. Lovett, him and his colonel were going down range to pick up some parts of a missile that was fired, a test missile. And the colonel heard the sergeant scream. He turned around and he saw something wrapped around the guy's leg and pulling him into a craft. And then, of course, they arrested the colonel for murder because they couldn't find a body. And they kind of didn't believe the story. But 2 days later, Sergeant Levitt shows up about a quarter of a mile from where he was taken, and he's in pretty much the same condition as the other fellows.
Gee, now...
And another thing, we have no report of any female being done in like this.
Really? And what is that with cows? Are you familiar with how that works? If it's cows or bulls?
Mostly female. I think that I think I may have read 2 cases where a bull was involved. And other than like with the cow, the udders were taken. In the case of the bull, the penis and testicles were removed. But now that's another story. When you see some of these pictures where somebody has actually removed the udders without damaging the stomachs of that cow, that's pretty much impossible. There's only like a quarter of an inch of skin between the outside of the udder skin and the inside, which the next thing they would hit would be the one of the cow's stomachs. I mean, we talked to some vets, and they said, "Hey, there's no way you're going to remove the udders or the whole sack of udders without damaging the stomachs." He said, "Nobody's that precise. I mean, you're using a scalpel. Well, these cuts aren't being made with a scalpel. These things are cut clean. They don't even show signs of being cauterized. I mean, when you cauterize something, there's always a burn mark. I mean, even if they were cauterizing something on your finger, you would see the cut, and then you would see the closure, and you would see a little dark spot around it. Well, that's from the heat. Well, these things show no heat. So what are they using? We don't have anything like that."
And is it the same for the people, the precision cutting like that?
Yeah.
Totally amazing. So anyone, before we move on, if anyone wants to give us a ring and talk to our guest tonight, that's 603-967-4030. You're welcome to call in. Pardon me. And in these cases, is there anything that can tie any of them together, any similarities between, say, the victims, or anything that at all that makes any type of sense where there's some type of connection?
The only, besides the condition of the body or the carcass, the only thing that kind of ties them all together is that they're in very remote areas when it happens. The sergeant, he's in the desert. The guy in Brazil, he's on an island in the middle of a man-made waterway. Some cattle have been found up on high ranges in high mountain areas where, people don't even go up to check on the cattle. I mean, they just turn them loose for the feeding season or whatever, and then they'll round them up come spring or whatever. And these guys are, they're out in the middle of nowhere. And there have been ranchers that have had cattle mutilated 6 or 7 times on the same ranch.
Wow.
One guy had a cow mutilated 50 feet from the barn door.
No.
He never saw or heard anything. Just went out that morning, and there laid the cow.
Right. I've heard of some similar things to that, like on the Skinwalker Ranch and stuff. Now, when we were, when I first asked you that question, what I meant was not the cows. Was there anything that can connect the people together? And before you answer that calls on again. I think I'm going to dare try this. So, hello, caller. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Say your name. Where are you calling from?
John Tackett, Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, John. How are you?
Ken, how you doing tonight, Martin?
I'm doing good. What's your question for the guest tonight?
My question is, what actual specific visual is the most common visual UFO you actually see? Because you made a comment earlier that discs are not really as happening as they were. So what would your perspective be on the most common visual sighting of a UFO? What's the shape?
The most common visual is, I'm going to split between two because they're almost one for one, is the triangle and the orb.
Okay, so the orb, what do you think the orb is? Do you think that's necessarily like would be our example of our robotic planes we have at this point?
Well,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but these orbs have been seen. They first came into visual range and photographic range during World War II.
I know that.
They called them Foo Fighters. Yep. And then they kind of disappeared after the war, and nothing was really seen of them again until the late 50s. And they were very sporadic. There wasn't many of them seen. I think somebody did research one time where they came up with about 100 reports in 5 years of an orb. Now, I'll get 8 to 10 reports a month of an orb.
Okay.
And how many?
And then now, here's some of the theories. Some people think that they are scout ships. Some people think that they are taking samples because there are a lot of reports where an orb is seen. It may be a large orb. Smaller orbs will exit the larger orb, and those smaller orbs will drop to the ground. They will disappear, won't be seen again, and then maybe 10, 15 minutes later, they'll come out of wherever they were and go straight up.
My perspective on those orbs was as drones as we know them in our society. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and it could be. I mean, it could be, but I guess the part that always quizzes me about these orbs is that there was a case in Oregon not too long ago. I believe it was last year or the year before. And a matter of fact, it was a MUFON case. And the gentleman is out cutting his lawn. He can't work anymore. He has epilepsy pretty bad. So he's out cutting his lawn. He lives on a one-way street that has a turnaround at the end. At the end of his street, there's opposite the turnaround, it's a T intersection. On the other side of the T intersection is a fence and a field and a clump of trees for a farm. He sees an object go behind the farm, which he describes saucer-shaped. It goes behind the trees. He can't see it anymore. Next thing you know, he says the ship, craft, it goes back up and disappears into the sky very fast. Out from behind the trees comes an orb that's about the size of a large beach ball, comes down the field, crosses over top of the fence, comes up the street, goes right past him to the point where he can touch it. The dogs in the neighborhood, which are normally quiet, and one German Shepherd that's never even barked a day in his life probably, he says, is trying to rip apart to get out of the house. His dog is going bananas. The thing passes him. As he looks at it, he said it's actually like translucent, but inside it's
I had a buddy of mine see one, and it looked kind of like a translucent balloon from a distance. You could almost see through it. It was also similar to a mirror.
Yeah, that's how he described it. He said it was almost like looking in a mirror with something moving around inside, like different colors. Now, the thing stops on top of a sewer plate, and all kind of start flying off the sewer plate, and then it picks itself up and about 4 or 5 foot off the ground, goes across the street and attaches itself to a pole that's an electric pole, a pole that generates electric, brings the electric into those homes. There's only a few homes on the street. It detaches itself. It starts to go down the street.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Now, when it attaches itself to the actual pole, did anybody in the area report any kind of power issues?
Yes. There was a drop in power, but nothing went off. I mean, in other words, a light dimmed, like, you were going to lose power.
Right.
Everything dropped down. By this time, there's neighbors outside. They see it. There's one lady who's on her porch next door to him, screaming at him to get away, and he's just dumbfounded. He's just standing there looking at it. And it comes back off the pole, goes back over to the plate, raises up 4 or 5 foot in the ground, and just vaporizes. Gone.
Interesting.
So it's almost like a idealistic transdimensional thing.
All total, there were 4 witnesses that saw the same thing.
Interesting. Well, John, hey,
he went in the house, was sick for 4 days, vomiting.
Really?
Wow. Wow.
John, thanks for calling in.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Hey, you're awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, bye-bye. Wow, that's quite the sighting. We had and it's fine that we're back on UFOs, but someone wanted to ask you a question in regards to what the conversation was a minute ago, and of the human mutilations, do the common phenomena of black helicopters, lights in the sky? There
have been 2 reports where black helicopters were seen in the area. Not overhead, but in the area. And when I say in the area, within a mile of where the mutilation was found.
Yeah, wow.
And that was both cattle and human.
Now, when we were talking earlier and I asked what the connections were, it sounded like you started speaking about the cattle mutilations, and when you said they were, left way out remotely and stuff like that, I was asking about the human mutilations. Is there anything that could connect one to another, or any similarities that you're aware of?
Other than the wounds, no.
That's it. Wow.
Yep.
Amazing. Now, are there people that are are you one of the few people researching this, or are other people involved?
I pretty much think I'm the only one that does it anymore.
Uh-huh. And you said this started back in 1956. Right?
That's when cases started popping up that bodies were being found with strange markings and missing parts.
Yeah. And 11 known in the U.S., and you started to say you were unsure about other countries. Do you know? I mean, England, I believe you said. Are there other?
Yeah, England. Mm-hmm. England, their researcher over there, Richard Hall, has been investigating these for probably a lot longer than I have. And, he's gotten some really great stuff going on over there. I'm familiar with most of his stuff, but, he's got a lot of stuff he's holding back yet that he's got to verify. And that's the biggest thing with these cases. You got to verify them before you go talking about them, because, they're so strange. You almost think that somebody just sat there and made them up. But, the cases that have come forward that, like the autopsy reports we can read, I had to get the one from Brazil, translated from their language to the U.S., but it was worth the $50.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And
not many people speak Portuguese around my area.
Yeah. So is there anything like radiation or anything like that? Any exposure or any other unusual things?
No radiation exposure, no burns, no how should I say, damage done to the body, like with an axe or a sharp knife or anything like that. Everything is precision. They're all done in the same way. Same parts are taken, not much body found, and, it's just very strange.
And approximately how long is the body left wherever it is? And are these indoor, outdoor? Where are they found?
Most outdoor. The only one I know that was indoor was the Cairo case. The others were all outdoors. Bliss, Idaho, that was out in the middle of nowhere, which is strange because when I first read that report, it kind of took me to Todd Cease, because when Cease was found, the area where he lives, and we've been there, I mean, it's so rocky that, I was wearing pretty heavy boots, and those rocks were hurting my feet. I mean, it's just unbelievable how rocky that area is. He was found in his socks, and his feet were not damaged at all. There was no, his feet, ankles, top, bottom were unremarkable. There was no damage, no scratches, no bruises, no nothing. How did he get there?
That is really weird. Yeah. And seemed to me that there was another, and maybe I'm confusing another case, but that people saw like someone, the same thing, like lifted up into a craft, but the guy was really in rough shape when he was found. Is that anything that sounds familiar to you?
That's the same case.
It is the same case.
Yeah, that's Todd C's case.
Yeah. Wow.
See, everybody's conception of this is that a UFO picked him up, took him up, and then, a day later dropped him off in the back, out in the back country. But, although we have a report that the guys, the fishermen and the farmers, see something like a man being pulled up into a craft above the power lines, dressed in his underwear, which, if at a distance from where the river is to where he was seen, and, it's like come out of his driveway and you cross the road, you're at the river. You have, at that distance, a guy in his shorts and a T-shirt with socks on would look like a guy in his underwear, I guess. And that's how he was found. Cut off jeans, T-shirt, and socks. That was it.
Yeah. Wow. Now, you mentioned in the very beginning of the podcast that, or the live show that is, that you had 10 separate chapters or whatever of this organization, and some in Europe. Are you like in touch with these people constantly, or does everyone work on their own?
No, we're in contact with everybody. They know what I'm doing. I know what they're doing. Matter of fact, that case that you were talking about with Alejandro, the ham operator and the airline pilot, that was a MUFON Utah case.
Right.
And the girl that investigated that, Erica Lukes, is the person that runs my U4 Cop branch in Utah.
Oh, so you mean as of just recently?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I like Erica. She's very nice. She's a past guest on the show.
Yeah, she's quite a lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, she joined us about, I believe it's 3 weeks now.
That's just about right. Yeah, we have been playing phone tag because I wanted to find out what exactly transpired. So I'm sure she'll share some of that with me. But yes. Wow. Well, we're getting near the end of the show, and so we have maybe 5 minutes or so left, 4 or 5 minutes. And
sure.
Do you actually have a website?
Yes.
Oh, and
yeah, it's U4Cop, U4Cop.com. It's UFORCOP.com.
No, I mean, do you have a personal website, or can you just be found on that one?
No, I'm also on Facebook. We have like 3 pages on Facebook. We have a U4Cop page. We have a UFO Research Center Pennsylvania page. We have a JAR page. I am the editor of JAR Magazine, which is a Journal of Abnormal Abduction Research. Huh. And then I have a personal page also.
Now, are you retired and you just do all this now? Like, this sounds like a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. When I'm done with you, I'll be up here in my office till about 4 a.m. Oh, I'll grab 6 hours of sleep, and I'll be back at it.
Wow. And
yeah, I retired in 2013.
Uh-huh. And then basically this is taking your time. Now, we're one more question along these lines. What's the furthest away that the farthest that you will travel for a case? Does it depend on what the case is?
Not really. I mean, if somebody needs like I said before, if anybody needs our help, whether it's something I can do here in the office or through the other groups, or if they require, if they need that mobile unit on the site of what they think they have, whether it's a cattle mutilation, whatever comes up. If it's within Pennsylvania, no problem. I can be at either end of Pennsylvania within 5 hours or less, way less. And if it's like, say, I'm going out to Missouri to investigate something, as long as they can help with the gas and tolls, I'm on my way.
I see. Now, do you have pictures of this rig?
We just took the old ones down. The new pictures of we just bought a 2016 Ford Transit, and
nice.
It's something we always, because the other one was a Ford. It was a 2012 12, but it was a little low top. This one we can walk around in inside. We have a lot more shelving in it. We just got it back from those folks yesterday, and for the last 3 days now, I've been shuffling equipment in and out and in and out. We'll have everything ready to roll in the next by the end of this week. Everything will be finished. The only thing won't be finished for 2 weeks is the radio. People have to put all the radios back in because we're going to do a different setup this time. We're going to put radios in a console between the seats, just like a police car, instead of hanging them off the ceiling and all that stuff.
Yeah, almost like storm chasers in a way.
Oh, we make them look sick. We got more equipment than they do.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed speaking to you tonight.
And my pleasure.
Yes. And so anyone out there that would like to contact you for a UFO report, instead of going to the other two that you hear so much about, they're welcome to contact you?
Yeah, they can contact me about anything, whether it's a question they want answered or if there's something I can find in my database, or they may have a photograph they want us to look at. We use Photoshop CMS7 to go over our photographs and a couple other programs we have. Or they have a case that they want looked at. The only thing I won't do is I won't interfere if somebody else is investigating the case.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
I just don't do that. I mean, that's just bad. That's just bad juju.
Yeah, but I totally get that. All right. Well, it's time to go, and I want to thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Oh, absolutely, anytime.
All right, you take care.
You too. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. And it's been a great show, I think, and hope you enjoyed it. And if you're listening this far, you're either listening live or you're listening on the Dark Matter Digital Network, or you're a supporter of the show and listening to the podcast. Remember, you can still donate. Doesn't matter what it is, for the buzz-off for Cancer for Kids that I did. And, yes, I'm bald as a cucumber. You can check that out on Podcast UFO. Thanks for listening. We have the one and only Stanton T. Friedman is on next week, and we'll be back then, same time, same place. Remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your curiosity high.